Okay, here we are. This is my second hangout today on the 15th of February, 2016. And I'm here with a new friend, Kamil Gregor. Did I say your name right, Kamil?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You said it better than most English-speaking people.
Okay, great. Now, we had met just a few days ago, and I don't even remember the context of the exchange, but something about, we started talking about the nature of God, I think, and you wanted to have a hangout. Maybe I challenged you or something, and you agreed to come on. And then I said, "Oh, I can't do it on Friday. Maybe I'll do it on Monday." And I forgot, and you reminded me, and I was like, "Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that." So here we are. It's a little late for you. I apologize. Are you on GMT? Is that your time? You in the UK?
No, it's actually Central European, so it's 1 hour later.
Oh,
It's like 10 past 11.
oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Well, thank you for being patient with me and staying up to talk to me.
That's all right.
I appreciate that. Well, so if you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But would you mind telling me just a little bit about yourself? I mean, you have an accent. Are you originally from another country? And
Yeah, I'm in Czech Republic, where I was born. Um, there's nothing particularly interesting about me. That's one thing that's quite interesting. Czech Republic is currently measured as the most atheistic country in the world, actually, together with Estonia, I think.
Okay,
So that's quite interesting.
that's interesting. Now, do you feel comfortable telling me a little bit about what you do for a living or what your background is? Do you have
Sure, I'm an IT developer.
Oh, okay, great. There's a lot of those around here. Well, that's great.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Well, that's great.
Um,
It's very nice to meet you. Thank you for entertaining me with a hangout.
I thank you.
Okay. Now, your first, um, how many languages do you speak?
Czech and English.
Just the two, because it
Yeah.
seems like people in across the sea, they're a lot more astute with their languages. Sometimes people will speak several languages. I barely speak one. A few words in Spanish. That's all I know. But other than that, I'm not terribly intelligent. Well, that's great. Well, I don't think I've spoken. Most everyone I have is on the British Isles, usually when it's in Europe. So it's interesting to speak to somebody from the Czech Republic. So that's great. It's exciting. Okay, so I don't remember the context of what we were talking about. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I think it was about the idea of an eternal universe, and we went through some of your objections, and I think we ended up with simplicity, I think. But actually, before we start, I want to ask you something. I watched most of your hangouts. Actually, I think all of them that I could find, either on your channel or on someone else's. And I've noticed that I think most of the time when people disagree with you, I think it's because for some reason they fail to understand how you're using some of the words, some of the
Okay.
terms. So I've actually wrote down like 9 or 10 basic philosophical terms. And I was wondering if we could maybe go through them and you
Yeah.
could give me like a short, concise definition so I can write it down, and maybe reference it later. I think it would be very helpful.
Okay,
Can
can
we
you
do
hold
that?
just a second? Let me get a glass of water. Can you hold a second?
Yeah, no problem.
And Emil, just so you know, I've only got about 45 minutes. I've got a case I've got to get to a doctor, my dental technician. And I've got to get it to him shortly after 5 for me. And then I got to call and make sure my kids are getting their homework done too. But anyway, so we got about
Yeah,
45
I think
minutes.
it shouldn't take longer than like 5 minutes if we go through the list quickly.
That's fine.
So how would you define a cause?
A cause?
Uh-huh.
Cause is that which gives rise to an effect. It's the only way you can define it.
That which gives rise to an effect. Cool. Yeah, I've got no problem with the definition. And I guess an effect then would be something that
Cause.
which is called.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the argument, that causality is analytically true. That means that the subject and a predicate of that statement, every effect requires a cause. The only way you can define those two terms is to invoke the other. So therefore it's true by definition. So to speak of a cause without an effect, I'm sorry, to speak of an effect without a cause is nonsense, because you have to invoke the other term in order to make any sense of it.
How would you define an event?
As an effect, insofar as it happens. Now, a cause, something can be both a cause and an effect. If you say you see a chain, that's what we see in the physical realm. We see things causing other things, but we see other things acting upon them and them being effects as well. So ultimately, a cause must be, in the first analysis, it must be self-existent. It cannot change, because otherwise then you have something being before it is.
Okay, so an event would be synonymous to an effect.
Well, they're not the same thing, but insofar as it happens, yes. In other words, it's a changing element. It's subject to change.
Okay, that works. So what does it mean to change?
To change, well, it's a state of affairs. It's something that can be acted upon. Something that is subject to change is something that is is contingent, is dependent, that's derived. It's a way measurement of time is done through change. So
I was maybe more asking about a change as a verb, because you often ask people, does this or that change?
Does it have any sort of movement as a result of being acted upon, or morphological change? I mean, there's a difference. There's a movement of it.
Okay, I see. So would it be fair to say that something changes if it's either a cause or an effect? If it's in a causal relationship?
Yes, something can be both a cause and an effect in different senses.
Sure, and to happen is basically synonymous to change, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, so we can use that interchangeably. And to become?
To become is intrinsically related to changing. That would be, Aristotelian terms. You've got form and matter. The theory of starts with an S. This theory of substance for Aristotle is each being has within itself both form and matter. The form is the being, and the matter is the becoming. And the form gives information to the being part, or to the becoming part, or the matter, the material aspect of it, and it informs it and guides it in a way that's going. So the great question between Western philosophy, or in Western philosophy, has been always that of being and becoming. How do you account for unity and diversity, or change in being? This was a great argument of the pre-Socratics, and there was actually skepticism as a result of the impasse between Heraclitus and Parmenides. Heraclitus said all is changing. Parmenides says no. If everything is all changed, then it's actually nothing. There's no identity to its being. And it wasn't until Socrates came and helped with that, and then Aristotle and Plato were hammering that out as well.
So could you give me like a short definition
of
to become? Like when you say that something becomes,
it changes. I mean,
okay. So that would be roughly the same as to change, right?
It would be necessarily related to an effect.
Okay, cool. Last three, self-existence.
Self-existence is that which exists in and of itself. It cannot be acted upon another. Otherwise, it would be contingent upon that which brings the change. So it must be in and of itself self-existent, and it cannot change, because if it changed, did I just say that? It may be acted upon by something else. So it's something that is not dependent in any way on anything other than itself.
Okay, and then contingence equivalently would be something that is dependent on something else, right? Do you mean causally dependent, or logically dependent, or both?
Both both
So if
logically
you
and
say, for
ontologically.
example, like X can only be Y, then you can say that Y is contingent on X, right?
No, are you using X and Y as ontological distinctions or states of being?
It can be an ontological entity or a property.
And you're saying that X is Y. I mean, I'm not sure
No,
that.
I mean, if you say that X can only be, let's say it like this: X can only have a property of Y, then you're saying that Y is contingent on X, right?
Hold on, let me think about that for a sec. Uh, if you're talking about an accidental property, which means if Y is an accident to, for example, I'm a human being and I have the accidental property of that which is humans, which might be having eyes and ears and stuff like that. But if I lose that accidental property, accidents is necessarily related to material or change. It's not something that's essential to me. In other words, I could have my eyes gouged out and I would still be a human being. So my eyes are accidental to me. So I don't necessarily have to have that. But
Sure,
at some
but
point, though, I'm going to lose something that's going to make me lose my humanness, which would be a necessary property. So you got your essence and you got your being. Um, so I don't know that why necessarily, it depends on how you're defining why. I mean, what exactly that is, because everything is not necessary to
well,
me.
if it is, then you're contingent on it, right?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase that?
If you let's say that Y is you, if you must necessarily have some property, then you're contingent on it, right? That's like a logical continuum.
No, I think. Can you hold on just a sec? I
Yeah.
need to get this. I'm sorry,
Are we
Camille.
good? Yeah, are
Sorry
we
about
good?
that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so I've come up with an example. So let's say that every human is a mammal. So if you say being human or human can only be a mammal, which means every human must necessarily be a mammal,
Mhm.
then you can say that being human is contingent on being a mammal, right? It's
Um,
something that's necessary. You can't fail to be, or you cannot lose. You can't lose your property
yeah,
of being a mammal,
right.
right?
I don't know that that word contingent, though, is a proper word to use. It's a necessarily definition, but it's not like mammalness is giving me my being, so I'm not
No,
contingent upon it.
no, it's the other way around. Like your humanness is giving you your mammalness, right? Because every human is a mammal. That would be
No,
the other
because
way
I
around.
no, because I think that this part of the definition of being a human is that to be a mammal. So I don't think those are two properties that are one is dependent upon the other. It's just definitional of what it is. Does that make sense?
Uh, sure. Well, that um okay. Yeah, I would say that's like contingency applies to logical relations, between statements. Those statements can be a part of a definition. If
Yes.
something is logically necessary for something else, that thing is contingent on it. But okay. And the last thing that it's a concept that you brought up in the post, and that's simplicity. So what do you mean by that? Because I guess that's not, your definition wouldn't be identical to how the word is commonly used.
Well, commonly used as it relates to God, it's a common usage. I mean, simplicity just
Well,
means
I
that.
mean, in like a common conversation, like between lay people. So you would mean something like philosophical simplicity, like
Yes,
indivisibility or something like that, right?
right. Not made up of parts. In
Okay.
other words, it's well, see, so, okay. For example, we're made up of substance and accidents. Okay, we have our being and our becoming, but God does not have that. He's not made up of parts. So, for example, if you look at me, you could take off my hand. I mean, I'll be vulgar, but you could take off my hand, and I would still be a human being. My accidents, but I would still have my humanness. And so, I have these properties that I gain or I can lose. And still be who I am. For God, there are no accidental properties, because if he were made up of parts, he would depend upon the parts to be God. So the doctrine of simplicity basically says this. It says nothing outside of God makes God to be God. And so if you want to say, oh, we got to put all these things together, composite, the opposite of simplicity would be composite. To say that God is composite, well, then God would not be God, but the parts, he would be dependent upon the parts to make him what he is. Furthermore, that which is complex needs an assembler. You can talk about the example that I've heard is a Lego man. You can say a Lego man goes down, a Lego man comes out, he's a composite entity that is put together. He needs an assembler, and the assembler puts him together, and in the end, he is that Lego man, or Lego. He has Lego manatee, if you will. God is not like that. He cannot be made up of parts. He must be pure actuality. There's no becoming. If something also is made up of parts, it is necessarily linked to becoming or growing or change necessarily. So simplicity is a necessary corollary to aseity, to pure being, pure form, pure actuality.
Awesome. So let's get to the actual objection to your argument.
Okay.
I've made like a diagram of the eternal universe. I think it would be helpful in the conversation. So if you allow me, I will just share a screen.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you see it clearly?
Yes.
Can you read all
hold
of
on.
it?
Hold on, let me white box you here. Okay, go ahead.
So can you read all of it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so that's basically an eternal universe, right? So it goes to infinity in all directions. It's made of discrete internal states. So that would be, the way the universe is in any given moment. And obviously, these states are contingent, one on the other. So there's a sequence of contingent internal states. But then there's the universe as a system, right? So that would the distinction between the universe as a system and any one of its internal states would be similar to a distinction between your body as a whole and your cells or internal states of your body, right? So that's obviously a different thing, right? If you were identical to any internal state of your body, then you would literally become a different person every moment. Right. So I would say that the internal states obviously are contingent one on another. They do change, happen, become. But the universe as a system is self-existing because it's not acted upon by anything external. It doesn't change because it's still the universe. It hasn't changed into anything, and it hasn't changed from anything. Doesn't happen, doesn't become. So would you tell me why this is impossible? Why this could be the case?
Sure, yeah. This is the most common argument that I encounter. The problem is are you going to make an ontological distinction between that which is unchanging and that which is changing, or the outside universe, if you want to call it that, and the inside universe? Is there a different ontology there?
No, it's still the universe. Like I'm making a distinction between the system and its parts and its internal states.
Okay, all right. Then what you're doing is you're violating the law of identity. You're saying the outside of it does not change, the inside of it does change, but it's the same entity. And so what it's doing, it's something and it's opposite at the same time in the same relationship, and that can't work.
No, it's not in the same relationship, right? Yeah, I agree to you up to the point it's the same at the same time in the same relationship. There's a difference, right? Right. I would violate the law of non-contradiction if I said that the universe as a system is both self-existing and contingent. But what I'm saying is the universe as a system, as a whole, is self-existing, but any of its internal state is contingent on the previous one. So that as I said in the post, this isn't problematic the same way as saying that any of your cells, the cells that compose your body, is single cellular, but at the same time, your body as a whole, as a system, has the opposite property of being single cellular. It has the property of being multicellular. So you can actually have a system that has a property that's also made up of constituent parts that all have the opposite property. There's no contradiction there.
No, you didn't decide it. You didn't define it as an opposite property, though. My multi-cells is not the opposite. It's not changing. One is changing, one is not changing. You see the difference? Kind of like saying it's both on and off at the same time in the same relationship.
Well, something is either single cellular or multicellular. It can't be both, right?
You can have single cells within and a bunch of cells working together, but somehow they cannot stop changing when you add them all together. Do you see the difference?
What I'm saying is that this is an analogy, right? I'm using the body as an analogy to explain that a system can have a different property, a property that's not present in its constituent parts. In this example, the internal states have the property of being contingent, all of them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the universe as a system must also have the property of being contingent. It has a property of being self-existing, not because the property of self-existence doesn't arise from its constituent parts. It arises by definition. It arises by the fact that the universe isn't acted upon by anything else, which is the definition of self-existence.
Okay, so did the universe happen?
The universe as a system doesn't. The internal states do.
Okay, so I don't know why this is difficult to understand. You're saying that there's the same ontology and that it doesn't change and that it does change.
No, there's a different ontology. The universe as a system has a different ontology than its internal states.
Oh, well, then that's fine. I mean, I had no problem with that. I mean, apparently we're just agreeing then. You just don't like the name of God.
So what would be the God? The universe?
The self-existence. That which is self-existence, which gives rise to contingency. You can't have it be the same ontology because you're saying something is what it is and it's opposite at the same time, same relationship. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, well, I mean, you can call the universe a god. That would be pantheism, right? Like, I don't have a problem with that.
No,
I just don't see
that's not pantheism because there's an ontological distinction. Remember, I'm saying I'm saying in this universe we've got self-existence and we've got contingent existence, and they both are existent. I totally agree with that, and I'm saying that self-existence gives rise to contingent existence, and essentially you've conceded my argument.
Yeah, well, obviously the universe is not identical to God, right? Like, I don't feel the need to use the word because I've got a universe that's self-existent.
Well, the concept is there. You just don't like it. But I mean, you basically conceded the argument.
For example, the universe wouldn't have all the other attributes that you would normally associate with a Christian God or any deity in that matter.
Okay, but you're saying that you yourself are separate from the universe as you're defining it here, right?
Well, I would be a bunch of stuff that's inside the universe.
Yes. But is the universe that you're describing as self-existent, is it distinct from you, that stuff that makes you up?
Distinct. It's not identical to it. It's a set that I'm an element of. So that would be the distinction.
You keep going back and forth. You keep defining it as a different ontology, and then you're saying it's the same ontology. You
No,
can't do that.
I've always insisted that it's a different ontology. You ask me, is it the same ontology? I said, no, it's a different ontology. The universe as a system, as a set, has a different ontology than its internal states.
Okay. Well, then you're not a part of the universe as you're defining it, because you are changing.
I am a part of the universe.
But you just said
I'm
there's a
an
different
element
ontology.
of a set. An element is not identical to a set, but it doesn't mean that the element is not a part of the set.
Okay, but if the set is not changing, then that which makes it up is not changing. Do you understand that?
No, that's not true. I mean, the internal states of the universe can change, but the universe is still the universe. It hasn't changed into anything else.
Again, you're equivocating. You're making the same ontology, and then you're saying they're different ontologies.
No, I've always insisted that there are different ontologies, though.
Well, yeah, but you're saying that, but then you define it as being the same ontology. You're saying we're part of it. But wait a minute, it's not you. No, it's a different ontology.
If you are part of something, if you are a part of something, then you don't have the same ontology as that which you are part of, right? If you have a set, then that set has an ontology, and then its elements have a different ontology than the set, right? Like a basket of eggs has a different ontology than any of the individual eggs.
Okay, I'm saying something completely different. I'm saying the ontology is a different being, because if you've got a basket of eggs or whatever, and the eggs are in the basket, that is the basket itself. I'm sorry, the basket of eggs itself is made up of pure matter that's changing. And when I say matter, I'm not necessarily mean physical matter, but I'm just saying in an Aristotelian sense, it's a matter. It's the becoming part. It's the part that also has elements of accidents as well. It's changing. So you can't say that the analogy for the eggs in the basket or anything like that, it fails, because you're saying pure contingency. You can't. Let me say it this way: you cannot put enough contingencies together to make them somehow.
Yes, you can. Do you want the number? Do you want to know the number of contingencies that you need to have, that you need to adapt to then make self-existence?
Yes, I do.
Okay, infinity.
Infinity is not a number.
Well, it's an amount. It's a quantity, right?
Yes, but think about that. I want you to think about this for a second. You're saying that things that change, if you get enough of them together, they suddenly never happened. I mean, think about that. It's ridiculous.
Well, as I said before, the property of self-existence of the universe as a system doesn't arise because of the contingents of the internal states. It's self-existent by definition, by the virtue of not being acted upon by anything external, right? If you have an infinite sequence of contingent internal states, then the system becomes self-existent, because there isn't anything external starting the infinite chain. Start of an infinite chain of events is nonsensical.
Okay, you've only compounded the problem infinitely. Now you're saying an infinite number of events without causes. That's what you're defining it as.
All of the events have causes.
So self-creation.
There isn't any uncaused internal state in the eternal universe. I agree that uncaused internal states would be a problem, but there are no uncaused internal states.
But you're saying that they're all effects, and they go back for infinity. You're just
all
multiplying
both cause and effect.
That's right. So in essence, they're all effects, right? Because they change.
Yes.
Okay, so what you've done is you violated the law of non-contradiction to affinity. You've only compounded the problem. You haven't solved it.
How so?
Because something can be and not be at the same time in the same relationship. You cannot speak of an effect without a cause.
Yeah, as I said, every internal state is an effect and a cause. It's an
Yes,
effect of the previous state and a
that's right.
cause of the following state.
That's
So
right.
I don't have any internal states that would be uncaused.
Well, no, you do, because they are all effects. That's what you got to
Well,
think of. You've got
they
to
are
tell
all
me.
causes also.
I'm sorry.
So I don't have any internal state that's uncaused. You said at the beginning that a cause can also be an effect. Well, here we go. Pick an internal state. It is a cause and it's also an
No,
effect.
no, I was not saying that a cause can be an effect in
Well,
the ultimate sense. I'm
that's
saying it can be.
exactly what you actually said.
No, but that's not what I meant. I wasn't saying that a cause can be a cause and effect in different relationships, and ultimately that cause that you're talking about is not efficient. It's instrumental. In other words, it happens. It's not making anything to happen. It's an instrument that is used. Are you familiar with the categories of Aristotelian causality, where you
Yeah, sure.
use the analogy of let's say the painter? He's painting a painting, and the efficient cause would be the painter himself. The final or teleological cause would be the reason for which he's doing it. The formal cause would be the blueprint by which he's following in order, it might be the person he's looking at or whatever is the formal cause. The instrumental cause will be the instruments that he uses. So what you're doing is all of these causes that you're talking about, they're really instrumental. They're not efficient. They're not going toward a goal or anything like that. They're just instruments in the process, but they're really not causal in the ultimate sense.
Well, some of them could be. Not all of them, but some of them could be.
How so?
Well, I mean, if some of the changes in some of the internal states are results of intelligent agents, then all four of the types of causation would be present. But I can imagine that there are some events or effects that are not caused by intelligent agents. In that case, some of the types of causes would not be present. But I don't really see how it's a problem. I mean, Aristotle himself says that you don't need all four causes. If that was the case, there would be no point of making the distinction.
I'm not understanding. You're saying some things can be. You're saying there can be such a thing as an efficient cause, but you're saying not all of them are efficient causes, and they are rather instrumental. So you've conceded my point. So all these causes you're talking about that are inside the universe are instrumental, and though you concede a contingent efficient cause, which would be mankind doing things, how do you justify intentionality by accident or unintended?
So is it possible for self-existence to be unintentional?
Self-exist. Well, it's defined by being a self.
Well, yeah, the self obviously doesn't refer to a mind. It refers to the fact that it's not being acted upon by anything external, right? So
Well,
is it possible for self-existence to be unintentional?
I don't see how you could, because the very fact of contingency is a product of intention.
So self-existence can only be intentional, right?
That's the only thing I can see it as being.
Okay. Well, well, if you insist on that, then you're basically making self-existent contingent on intentionality.
No, I'm making it definitional.
Sure.
Not making it definitional to it, because that's what the word means.
Well, in your definition, self-existent is contingent on intentionality, so that would be a contradiction, right? If you're saying
no, I'm saying it's part of the definition. It's not.
Well,
it's
yeah,
not.
and your definition contains a contradiction. If you're saying that self-existence must necessarily be intentional, then you're making self-existent contingent on
No, I'm not.
intentional.
That's like saying a hot dog is contingent on being, ground pork or something like that. It's not. It's not contingent on. It's just what it is. It's a definitional term. It's like saying a cause. A cause is definitional, is dependent upon that which gives rise to an effect. No, that's just what it is.
Well, the thing is that in your definition, if you say, well, first of all, the definition of self-existence doesn't contain the notion of intentionality. The definition of self-existence, as you gave it, means just that the thing isn't acted upon by anything external, right? But the problem is that if you make a list of properties and you slap them to self-existence, then you're making self-existent contingent on having those properties. That's a problem.
No, I'm not. I'm defining it as such, saying that is what it is necessarily. It doesn't become intentional. It is intentional. That's why God cannot have.
It's intentional necessarily, right? So it's contingent
Yes.
on being intentional. Because
No.
if it wasn't intentional, it wouldn't be self-existing.
No. Contingency is necessarily related to becoming. Okay, and I say God is simple. So God doesn't happen. So he just is who he is, and that's what he is by definition, but it's not something that is added to him as an accidental or composite property.
Okay, so is it possible for existent how would you call something that's self-existent but unintentional? Because if you're making intentionality part of a definition of self-existence, then you suddenly need to have a different word for something that's not being acted upon by anything external, yet at the same time isn't intentional.
It's called self-existence.
Yeah, but as I said, if your definition of self-existence contains intentionality, then you need another word for something that isn't acted upon by anything else, but also is unintentional.
No, you can talk about it ad nauseum and describe it in many different ways.
I just need to define
those
it,
are not
right?
incidental properties for it, huh?
I just need to define it. Like if you're sneaking the definition of intentionality into a definition of self-existence, then I need a different word to describe self-existence that's unintentional.
No, there's no such thing.
Let me just, well, there may not be any such thing in reality, but we just need to have a word for the concept, right?
Well, you can say nonsense, I guess.
Well, nonsense already has a meaning. Let me make a cross tabulation between self-existence, contingency, and intentionality, and okay, and let me share that with you. Can you see that?
No.
Let me maybe, instead of self-existence, put not being acted upon and being acted upon. So normally, we would say that this is both self-existence, right? Both of these two things would be self-existence. Both of these things would be contingents. But if you want to make intentionality part of a definition of something that's also not being acted upon, then this would be self-existence. Under your new definition, this would be contingents. So, and now you need a new word for this and this.
I don't know how. I don't know why.
Oh, well, because it's a different thing, right? Like if you would say that this is identical to this, then you would be violating the law of non-contradiction, because intentionality isn't identical to unintentionality.
Are you thinking you're screen sharing to me? Because I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, sorry. Okay. My apologies. You should see an Excel table.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
You see that?
Yeah.
So as I was saying, like these are the things that are not acted upon. These are the things that are being acted upon, right? Normally, we would say that these two cells would come under the label of self-existence, and these two would come under the label of contingents. But the thing is that if you want to make intentionality part of your definition of self-existence, then you need two new words for this and this.
I don't see how, because see, the very fact that contingency exists, it had to be valued, otherwise it would not be.
Do you have an
it's created out of nothing.
do you have an argument for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's my whole argument. I mean, it's like
What you're basically saying that every contingent unintentionality requires an intentional cause?
no, I am saying that which is made from nothing, which is dependent for its existence, has to be valued, otherwise it would not be.
Well, you just rephrased the same thing. You're basically saying that every contingent unintentional thing requires to be valued. So it requires a cause that values.
That's right. Yes.
Why?
Because otherwise it would not be.
Why? Why not? I mean, like, for example, like it's possible for an effect to have a property that's not being present in the cause, right? So for example, if you mix yellow and blue, you get green. If what you're saying was true, then you would never get green from anything other than green, right? So unintentionality can arise from I mean, unintentional effect can arise from an unintentional cause.
Not when it's being created from nothing. In other words, that's what
Yeah,
contingent.
but in my eternal universe, nothing is ever created from nothing.
Okay, it's eternally changing, though, right?
Oh, well, the internal states, but the universe is still the universe.
Okay, well, you're conflating the two categories. You can't do
No,
that.
I'm actually making a very careful distinction between the two.
Can you hold just a sec?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. Do you still have time?
You know what? I need to get going.
That's all right. It was a great conversation. For some reason, I would say it went better than your conversations with most people. That's what I think. At least it was very polite.
My brain cells were working hard there, so that was very helpful. I enjoy conversations like that that are challenged. So
cool.
Oh, that's great. All right, well, we'll talk again.
And, definitely. I've got a bunch of questions actually. Okay. I would especially at some point like to talk about the stuff that people never get to when they have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hold just a sec?
Yeah, it's all right.
Okay.
So as I was saying, I would at some point like to have the discussion about some of the things that people usually don't get to when they talk to you because they you get stuck at the at the first steps. So something like what makes you think that if there is a self-existing being, it's specifically the Christian God of the Southern Baptist flavor, something like that. But if you have to go, I perfectly understand.
Yeah, I've got like 3 things going on right now, so I got to get going. But thank you, thank you for having us, and we'll do it again.
Okay, bye.
Right, thanks, man. Bye.
Bye.
Am I interrupting?